Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today, Sun and Moon, they're coming together at 10 degree 28 minutes of Taurus, forming a solar eclipse. This is an eclipse which will influence us over the course of next 6 months, but we will see the full influence of this eclipse, which is a new beginning, a new start in our physical existence and in our financial abundance. We will only see that new start physically, in my view, through a fated event in January 2023, even though there will be surprises and information coming to surface over the course of next 2 weeks, which will make it evident what this new start needs to be. But the full reveal of the seeds that we're going to sow, or the influences that are going to come about over the course of next 2 weeks, will only become evident physically to us in January of 2023. It's like a surprise is coming, a new start is afoot because of an ending which is happening, or an information that is revealed, or the global scenario that changes. But our new start, our personal start, will only happen in January of 2023, even though we envisage that new start right now, even though the seeds are sown right now of that new beginning, which can be physical in nature, financial in nature, and it will also bring about some earth related changes, resources that feed us, that sustain us, because this is very much about sustenance and practical aspects of life, which will change and shift as a result of the changes that we'll see over the course of next week, especially around 5th of May. For the rest of 2022, we would lay down the foundation of this new long-term financial and physical shift that this eclipse would bring. Shifts in Taurus, they are fixed, they are long-term, they need a lot of endurance to go through, and they will test our resolve and our persistence towards a goal. Moon is only covering 64% of the sun right now, making this a partial solar eclipse, which is only visible from a very narrow and limited area on Earth, which is south of America and Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. The areas which have the visibility of the eclipse, they are physically influenced through physical shifts and events which happen in those areas. That's why I'm mentioning them. While the activation of this eclipse, as I mentioned, will only happen in January of 2023 through a fated new beginning due to the Sun Uranus conjunction which is happening on 5th of May, and the fact that this is an eclipse, we will see some surprising events and shifts in the coming week, especially around 5th of May itself. The preview of those changes, in my view, have already been shown to us around 18th of May, when we had Mercury and Uranus meeting each other as well around 14 degree 47 minutes of Taurus. We have Uranus going back and forth over this 14 degree 47 minutes of Taurus in 2021 itself. So there is a history behind this shift, which has an activation which happened, in my view, around August or September of 2021, and it was possibly envisaged for the first time in 2020. I'll go over these two specific degrees of Taurus which are getting activated, which is 10 degree 28 minutes of Taurus and 14 degree 47 minutes of Taurus, and I would detail the significance of the background dates that are coming through this eclipse activation. Eclipses, they bring fated events. This one specifically, due to involvement of Uranus, will bring unexpected shifts in our life. We would need to manage our nerves to some extent and open ourselves to a new frequency that this eclipse is bringing. My name is Charu. I'm your host on this journey. Let's dig in. Digging into the nature of the new beginning that this solar eclipse, like any other new moon, is offering, Taurus eclipses and shifts are very much about economic and earth related new starts, resources related new start, the basic building blocks of our body, of our food, the kind of diet we have, the finances, the sources of income, the house we live in. This is about the structure of our life and the things that make us feel safe and secure in a material sense that go through a new beginning with a Taurus solar eclipse or a Taurus new moon that we are experiencing. Uranus would make those shifts very, very animated in nature. They could be really dramatic in nature. We could take a completely different direction when it comes to our physical self, when it comes to our sustenance, the kind of diet we follow, the revenue sources we have, the economic environment we are operating in, or the kind of money we use, or the kind of currency we use, or the earth resources that we use, or the sources of earth resources can change completely. Uranus will bring some surprises that we have not seen so far in that area, and that information will come to surface in my view over the course of next 10 days. And these surprises would range on a global basis, range from currencies, stock exchange, finances, industry, food, crops, especially like corn. Corn is ruled by Taurus, real estate, building blocks, actual buildings, real estate, property related, earth surface, especially earthquake or seismic activity related changes, farms. It's about changes in those areas which are long term in nature. And Uranus isn't just about surprises, it's about progress in these areas of our life. It's about shaking off the old frequency that we might have been living with for a very long time and having the guts to move away from that old frequency that is not serving us and moving on to what's now the vibration of the future, especially when it comes to our sources of income. For example, if we've been relying on a traditional source of income or a traditional skill set to earn the income, we'll see changes on a very global basis on how people earn their income. And that change has been coming about since Uranus entered Taurus in 2018 itself. But now we are moving to the second decan of Taurus. We were in the first decan of Taurus till 2021, and the first decan of Taurus, which is the first 10 degrees of Taurus, it's ruled by Venus. It's about the choices we make and the heart desires that we have coming to surface. And the second decan of Taurus, with Uranus coming over there, is about commercialization of those desires, making money from those desires, actually bringing them about, vocalization of those desires. For example, Adele was writing her songs when Uranus was in the first decan. I'm giving her example because she's a 10 degree Taurus, so it becomes very evident with her example. You can see in your own personal life, 2018, 19, 21, 2018 to 2021 was the period of rising of those new desires on how you want to make money, how do you want to change some fixed parts of your life, which could involve relationship, love, currency, how do you earn money, what are the building blocks of your body, the kind of diet that you follow, what kind of body, relationship with your body that you want to have. Those shifts were only thought of or felt deeply in our heart in that period. And now that we move to the second decan of Taurus, it's the time to actually vocalize them. So she started actually launching her album at this time, telling the world about her story, etc. Those things start coming about in the second decan of Taurus, and that is what we are living through, and that is what we are actualizing into a physical new start. But because of the delays and because of the fact that this is 10 degree of Taurus, where nodes will not reach till January of 2023, you will not physically feel this new start, in my view, till January of 2023, even if you start taking active steps towards that change. And the surprises and the shifts that are going to show up in the coming few days, it will shake us from an old existence, make us more sure about where we want to go next and what is the new frequency under which we want to operate, what is the new physical scenario in which we want to operate going forward. And since Uranus is about to come into contact with North Node on 31st of July at 18 degree 42 minutes of Taurus, that is going to be a very, very rare transit. Forget our generation, couple of generations before us have never experienced this transit. It will be a very rare transit that will happen on 31st of July, which is Uranus meeting North Node in Taurus at 18 degree 42 minutes of Taurus. We will see a series of fated events which are financial in nature, earth linked in nature, natural resources linked event, which will propel us to a new reality, and it will change our collective physical existence. Taurus changes are long term in nature. There is resistance to those changes because this is a fixed part of our life, and we feel secure in holding on to the past in this part of our life, whether it is our personal relationship, it's the way we make money, or it is the house we live in, or the physical comfort of the food that we eat. There is physical resistance in moving on from that, and we will find that this new personal beginning in finances, in partnerships, in love, in creative self-expression, in ego, in self-respect, in the sense of self, in confidence, in tenacity, in financial security, they are not easy to come, and we'll have to uproot ourselves from an old way of being, and that will happen possibly through certain surprising events and shocks with Sun Uranus conjunction, and then following that the Mars Uranus conjunction will bring as we approach the 31st of July Uranus North Node conjunction. This is not just true for us personally, even though Taurus is very much about our individual existence. This will collectively shift how our economy works, how our physical resources work, how we treat the earth resources, and so on. And this period between the two eclipses that exist from now to 16th of May, the second eclipse is about to happen on 16th of May, which is the lunar eclipse in Scorpio. This period between these two eclipses is the most influential period when it comes to the series of these fated events that I'm talking about, and they will accelerate over the course of next 2 weeks. We would see this specifically as we observe Sun meeting Uranus at 14 degree 47 minutes of Taurus on 5th of May, and then reaching North Node in Taurus on 13th of May at 22 degree 32 minutes of Taurus. Both of these conjunctions, they come with fixed stars which have a nature of Saturn, which means that there will be impediments, there will be delays, there will be slowdowns, there will be pressures, there will be resistance to this change, and that will show up in our financial and resources changes that need to be made now as a result of the changes that all of us are going to go through collectively. We have, of course, already seen the precursor of these changes around 18th of April when Mercury met Uranus. You can look back at your own personal life when Mercury met Uranus on 18th of April, and then it met North Node on 23rd of April. So the last week in some ways has been a precursor of what's about to come. Mercury is about to go retrograde on 10th of May. So things in general are bound to slow down in terms of positive progress at this time, and it might become more of a time when we need to review issues of the past and think about investing in this new future that we have envisaged for us. Eclipses are the times when we work to seed a new reality for ourselves, as fated changes would shift the environment we would be collectively operating in, and it may be the time when we would need to individually slow down in terms of trying to push our changes or our agenda when it comes to physical shifts. But rather we'll be required to wait, have the Taurus resolve, have the Taurus patience to take a step back and wait and see what information and changes are being revealed to us and are coming to surface both in our individual capacity as well as in global events, to then decide how we want to move forward on this new direction we want to take. Let's talk about the immediate history and the timeline that is coming about, which is leading to these changes. So the chain of events that I'm talking about, they're part of the shift that began in July or August of 2021. That was the first time when Uranus touched around 14:47 minutes of Taurus, 14 degree 47 minutes of Taurus. So there are 2 degrees. that are getting activated right now. There is 10 degree of Taurus, there is around 14, 15 degree of Taurus. These are the 2 degrees which are important and getting activated right now. Uranus went retrograde around this 10 degree of Taurus where the eclipse is happening back in August of 2020. So it was around those time that especially the second half of 2020, starting from around July of 2020, when we actually might have thought of making these changes and these shifts. We were first inspired to start making those changes, in my view, around those times. And you can look at specific dates for yourself as 2nd of August, 10th of August, and 15th of September 2020. These could have been stressful times and stressful days because there were hard aspects that were made around those times. So the inspiration might have come through a friction. It might have come through us being kicked in the guts in terms of our ego or pride being hurt in some ways, which led to an inner conflict, finally leading us to a resolve to change things when it comes to how do I want to earn income, what kind of skill sets I want to use, what kind of self-respect I deserve, and hence which directional change I need to go through both in my personal and in my professional life. So sometimes we don't even know when these kind of aspects are hitting us that we are actually ceding freedom. Through stress, a freedom was ceded, or a desire for freedom was seeded, in my view, at that time. And if you would go back to the words that came out of you of any sorts during that period, any ask that came out of you through that stress, you would realize that you're about to live that reality. You're about to live that beginning that you had asked for at the time of that stressful event. Something old, something traditional, which was potentially weighing us down, and it might have created a feeling of drowning and being suffocated in some ways, that is being lifted off, and it is going to lift off with a little bit of a shock and surprise or a different direction. We transitioned, as I mentioned, from the Venus decan of Taurus to Mercury decan of Taurus in April of 2021, when Uranus got done with the back and forth around 10 degree of Taurus. And this is the shift from wishing it to actually doing it and saying it and opening up to the world about it. So as I said, 2018 to 2020, Uranus transit over the first decan of Taurus was about waking up of dormant desires, wants, asks, and choices, especially linked to our freedom and our creativity, which has stayed stale for a very long time. And then now this 2021 to 2023 transit through the second decan is about verbalizing it. It's about commercializing it. It's about implementing the changes on those lines. As Uranus is now around 14 degree of Taurus, we have moved from cultural awakening to now individual awakening. When you look at Sambian astrology and Sambian symbols of these degrees, you have moved from a chapter of your life of a collective awakening which happened through a collective event to now individual awakening and changes and revitalization of simple individual desires, which is the aim of this eclipse. We would be, though, overcome by the Scorpio Lunar Eclipse. So as much as I talk about this eclipse being all about implementing your desires and your need for freedom, you would be overcome by the emotional sea that is going to come up because of the Scorpio Lunar Eclipse, which is happening on 16th of May, which is much more dominant, which is much more potent, even though solar eclipse is the one which is supposed to be more physically felt. But because we have Scorpio Lunar Eclipse, with the nodes right now, which means that this eclipse is already activated. It's physically active and affecting us collectively. We have talked about it. It got activated in February itself. I've been talking about the Scorpio eclipse, I think, since last year, because it's on my ascendant, so it physically affects me. It's very personal in nature for me. So we've been talking about it for a very long time, and the ending and revelations and possibly some sort of collective transformation is an offing which will happen, in my view, through possibly, unfortunately, some sort of loss or even a traumatic event or a financial loss that comes about, or a financial or a hidden connections or dysfunction that comes to surface. So you cannot really invigorate or reinvigorate a body which is filled with venom. And the solar eclipse in Scorpio with the south node is about draining the venom, whether it is the financial dysfunction, it is the bubbles in the financial world, or it is about the dysfunction in the political system that needs to be drained, that needs to be shown on how there are hidden nexus between different parts of the world which are actually draining the money away from the real economy or the real people. You will find that the drain will happen before the revitalization. So the new economy cannot be built on top of old economy. New economy is built after draining the old economy. So the drain happens before the revitalization. It's true for the financial system, it's true for the hidden connection, and it's very much true for our own personal well-being and our own financial freedom, which means that toxins from our physical diet, from our body, they need to be, as well as financial drains and financial debt that is draining us, or the financial negative habits that are draining us, or the relationship habits that are draining us, they need to be excluded and drained before the new partnerships, the new relationships, and the new patterns which are for long term, they can be set with the January 2023 activation of the Taurus eclipse. And that is how, in my view, these two eclipses will interact with each other. Healing is to be had before physical changes can show up. I'm stating this here because you would be shockingly asking me, in my view, next week, where is my new financial beginning? That's next week here already. When you do not see it and you only see the news of shocking informations coming to surface, or some sort of financial issues coming to surface, debt-related issues that I've spoken about before coming to surface, instead of finding pathways of growth. That's just the way the cards are stacked right now. Even though Sun meeting North Node on 13th of May and Sun Uranus meeting all of the first 10 days of May, along with this beautiful sextile that Sun is going to make with Mars all of first half of May, it's giving us excellent energy and opportunity to achieve material progress in a very different and progressive direction. But there is something to be closed and drained before you can go in that direction. Emotionally, you will not feel like a new start. It wouldn't feel that way. It would feel dark. It would feel intense. And we have this dark night of the solar eclipse. I'm being very honest. I'm a Scorpio ascendant. You have to say as it is. Scorpio eclipses, they are very powerful, very empowering in nature, but they are emotionally stressful. Scorpio eclipse, they are very much about rebirth. They're about overpowering our emotional existence to replace the emotional patterns. So there will be some overpowering of our mind and our mental health, which will happen, and we need to be gentle with ourselves when that happens in the process to it. Sun Uranus of 5th of May, it will create immense opportunity of inner drive to move in a totally different direction, an exciting direction. We plan to and should plan to do something different as a result of outcome of that. 5th of May could make us feel very rebellious, very much fight or flight mode with traditions, with parents, with any kind of authority figures. Any kind of restraint is not acceptable when this transit happens. And it comes with the package. Restlessness comes with the package of wanting to and physically finally moving in a different direction, because Mars is there. You have the opportunity to start actively working towards the new direction, but you would find physical restlessness, carelessness, some amount of rebellious nature, it will come in the package. So drive a little bit carefully, because we'll be in a hurry so as to speak right when Mercury is about to go retrograde. This needs physical outlet. We would need a physical outlet of this physical positive energy. So start working towards the new direction, but don't expect it to get finalized or finally show up in your direction at this point in time. We would want to drive at 100 miles, but we are about to enter Mercury retrograde right on 10th of May. There are emotions to be dealt with the Scorpio eclipse, feelings of others, how we are still connected with others while we are trying to go in an independent direction, how the others rely on us and how we rely on the others. Those questions will come up. Our partnerships, which we might be seeking independence from and want to accomplish independence from, there will be connections of those, strings of those attached to those partnership that will come into reconsideration. There are old chapters that we would finally need to bid goodbyes to. There are hidden nexus to be disclosed when it comes to a political system. Fixed star Algol is being activated by the Sun and the North Node with the eclipse of 16th of May. There are bound to be collective draining of the venom that is to be experienced as the star which is considered to be not a positive star, which is activated by the eclipse that is ahead of us. And it is the star of beheading of Medusa's head, and that is activated, which means that some sort of venom or something that is draining you and me in our individual situation, not letting us move in a new direction when it comes to our financial abundance, when it comes to a pure heart's desires that are new in nature. So whatever is blocking us from moving in that direction, there is a draining that needs to happen of that. We cannot move on without that happening. Let's briefly talk about the Mercury retrograde that is happening from 10th of May to 3rd of June. Mercury retrograde that is beginning on 10th of May and ends on 3rd of June. You know the drill of Mercury retrograde. Our mind will be essentially in subconscious matters. It will be going to the basement of our consciousness and digging and exploring some existential questions. And before you can move on to new direction, those questions need to be answered. Mercury retrograde is largely also in Taurus, and it would bring about questions of survival. Taurus and Earth Mercury retrogrades are about our contribution. What do we want to create, tangibly create, physically create in our life? Literal bread and butter questions of the world, the food, the finances, the money, the currency, the security, the house, the place of living. Those practical concerns and basic needs would be online, and there will be some amount of back and forth reconsiderations on those matter. While it will start in Gemini, Mercury will be in Gemini when we begin the retrograde on 10th of May, which means that there will be some amount of transportation issues, travel issues, media issues, miscommunication that will be the beginning of this Mercury retrograde. But individually, even though we'll start with how do we communicate, that's where the Mercury retrograde start. Individually, we would need to search how do we want to connect with the practical world, because that's what the Taurus retrograde, Mercury retrograde usually brings about, without losing the connection to our soul, which Jupiter-Neptune conjunction as well as the Scorpio eclipse will bring to focus, without losing our connection to the truth, our personal individual's truth and our soul's purpose and our soul's evolvement. How do we connect to the real material world? How do we bring the two together? Review objectively your assets, your liabilities, your money, your ego or self-respect, or how much do you respect yourself and your talents during this time. But do not shred your ego. There is a tendency to go into a ego shredding mode. Mercury retrograde in Taurus is literally ego shredding period. So do not invalidate what you thought was valuable in the past. Doesn't mean that our past becomes invalidated because of the new feelings or the new emotions or the new information that is coming to surface. Practical factors, though, of our physical life, how we earn, how much we earn, security of our life, where do we live, how well are we connected to our needs, how well are we connected to our physical body, they would come up, and the guilt will set in on some matters which we have not attended to of practical nature. But be careful of not beating yourself up about that. Jupiter-Neptune conjunction and the dominance that we all have been living through, it has strengthened our collective spiritual side, a spiritual element. But we might have floated away to some extent when it comes to when you're too much on the spiritual sphere. Sometimes the physical sphere is ignored, and that gets highlighted by this Mercury retrograde. Jupiter-Neptune dominance, it makes us swept away in collective feelings which are not our own. Sometimes those influences are from other people. They are feelings of other people. They're actually life physically of other people, in which we get too engrossed, like the collective feelings on war. Not that it doesn't affect the collective, but there is much more emotions attached to individuals involved in a war, and the divorce of celebrities, the things that are happening on the screen, we get very emotionally invested in them, and there is a purpose to that. It is part of our collective consciousness waking up and we learning new things, or sometimes it's just vanity projects to distract ourselves from what truly matters in our life. Vanity projects that distract ourselves from the problems of practical nature that do exist in our life. So, well, they do come back, and they are coming back with this Mercury retrograde, and they will come back to hound us a little bit as the lens shines on our individual well-being, our money, our resources, our well-being, our physical body, our health, and our personal relationships, which are valuable to us. And it's high time for that we shine the light back on them, because they need to be reconsidered and fixed. Now, North Node is in Taurus. The road to success and the road to growth is through managing these practical matters and getting them in order. Let's look at the history. I talked about the immediate history, which is the 2020 and so forth. Let's talk of history, which is 2003-2004 period. Changes in fixed parts of our life, their effort, and this is very much for many of us, especially if you have planets around fixed signs, 10 degree or 15 degree of fixed signs, even 22 degree of fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, and of course Taurus, you will find that this would be very much about to stay or to leave kind of decisions in essential and fixed parts of your life. This is Uranus initiation though, so there's an element of unknown. There's an element of new and exciting despite the volatility and the uprootedness that you and I are going to feel. Depends on how we individually look at the change, depends on how much earth and fixed sign or fixed element we have in our chart, how much resistant we are individually to change. You will feel this more or less depending on that, whether you are excited about the change or you find resistance to change. Depending on that, we can take it hard or we can take it in an excited manner. I cannot exactly take you back to 2003, but you could look back, because everything is not the same, but you could look back if you're old enough to May 2003 to June of 2004. That is the period when we had the new moon in Taurus at the degree with the North Node in Taurus. Especially June of 2004, May or June of 2004 was the period of the new start, and it was in some ways driven by changes starting from May of 2003. Some of us are not old enough for that period to matter, and some of us are too old to remember that period. But if you could look back to that time, if you have the planets or points, especially in fixed signs, which is Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, and Taurus, especially around 10 degree, 25 degrees, you'll find that that period could have been a very significant period of lifetime of changes for you, especially around May or June of 2004 in terms of new beginnings. Now just make it 100x. Because this time we are having Uranus involved in it, which did not exist at that time. Uranus was not in Taurus back in 2003-2004. So this is going to be much more in terms of surprises and a radical change in direction. It screams surprise, it screams changes in fixed parts and constant parts of our life, which we will only register fully in January of 2023, just as we did back in May or June of 2004. 2004. So if you're old enough, you can look back to May, June 2004. What did start for you? And it could be because of an ending or a resolve or something that was brought about in your life, some sort of a rebirth in your life, which happened back in 2003. Around 1 year back. So it was a transition from May of 2003 to May of 2004 essentially, but our emotional state essentially would be very much like May to August of 2003 right now, because Scorpio eclipse, as I said, is dominating right now. Coming closer to when we were all younger and conscious, we could see maybe a change from 2013. So in a recent history beyond the 2020 chapter that I talked about, you could look back to August or September of 2013. This is the reversal of that. So there is a shift in focus from something that began possibly in August or September of 2013. So maybe your focus was shifted towards the others in your life, or towards a partnership, or through a karmic relationship, or towards a financial drain or an expense or a loan, which started in August or September of 2013. You would move your focus away from that, and there'll be a shift of priorities in my view from August or September of 2013. We would do another reading, because this is already getting a bit long. We would do another reading on road to success. Where we will go deeper into what is the way to be under, to go through successfully through North Node in Taurus, which to be more in line with the energy of North Node in Taurus. There is no right or wrong way, but there is a way to swim with the current, even if the current is full of the anarchy of Uranus. There is a way to be when North Node is in Taurus, and we'll go deeper into that in the second reading I would do, where we would go about road to success. What is the road to success with this new moon, with this new start, with North Node in Taurus all the way till 2023. That's next. And of course, we're going to talk about the Scorpio Lunar Eclipse, which is key for me personally, as I said. So if you don't find me so often over here, it's because I'm possibly meeting myself at some abyss because of that. I'm looking forward to the Jupiter in Aries transit, which is also going to begin on 10th of May. Jupiter is entering Aries only for a brief transit from 10th of May to 28th of October. It would, globally, it would enhance and exaggerate the aggression and possibly the war drums, because Aries is about Mars, it's about fighting, it's about aggression, it's about anger, but it's also about personal initiation. So when Jupiter enters Aries on an individual basis, you would find that you would again find if you've lost, because Jupiter in Pisces is very much about floating in the water. It's very good for spiritual growth, but we can float away a little bit when Jupiter is in Pisces. So the individual initiative would come back, in my view, with a bang with Jupiter entering Aries, and I'm personally looking forward to that because I have a lot of planets in Aries. We could all welcome a bit of fire, a bit of pump up of individual initiative after swimming in too deep water for too long. You could look back to June to September of 2010 to see how that transit's last preview was for you personally, to get a personal flavor. So you could look back to June to September 2010 when last Jupiter dipped briefly into Aries, and then in 2011 it was fully in Aries. Same for it now. You would find that it would have a brief transit from 10th of May to 28th of October in Aries, and then it will fully enter Aries after December of 2022 all the way into mid of 2023. Global events, I'm not going to go deeper into global events here because we've spoken about it so many times in the last videos that there are expected debt issues as a result of the Scorpio eclipse that is upon us. Scorpio eclipse is also on Biden's sun. As I spoke before, it can come with some disclosure, of nexus, financial nexus, some amount of loss, release, even physical loss of some nature. This is not very good for vitality when it happens on your sun. This is very much also globally about economy and finances along with ego drives. So when you have a Taurus North Node solar eclipse, egos go into overdrive, and we'll see the result of that. There will be some economic and financial repercussions as a result of that. I've already mentioned Uranus and North Node transit, them progressing together, becoming exact together on 31st of July. That is happening on natal Mars of Germany. So we will see some surprising announcements or changes coming out on the road to that 31st of July conjunction, and it will give us some indication. Will the words that are being said, will they become action? Well, a Mars transit usually tells us that. So we will know that starting from now to July. That conjunction sits right, the Sun and Mercury, Sun Uranus conjunction that is happening on 5th of May. It's happening on Adele's sun. If anybody cares, I'm a fan, so I care. So 5th of May conjunction of Sun and Uranus is happening on her sun. That conjunction is happening right where Fed is giving its decision on rate increases, which will come as is expected with financial volatility, but there could be an element of surprise linked to that. This is not financial advice. I'm just telling you what transits are happening on those dates. This is just the start though. This is just the start. This is strategically placed start of a new beginning of surprises and volatility when it comes to financial industry. This is not financial advice. I will go a little bit into the health aspects briefly. This eclipse, especially because of the fixed star which is being aspected over here, is very stimulative. And Sun and Uranus meeting together on 5th of May will be very stimulative. It's very stimulative for thyroid gland. So if you have an underlying imbalance, you can feel that enhanced at this time. Yeah, I wouldn't put it in physical health, but more from mental health perspective. When Sun and Uranus are together, we do things that we would normally not do, and we can be very impulsive in decision making here, especially in love and money and life decision. So we need to be a little bit careful around 5th of May. This is a very nervy time and a very nervy eclipse. Again, due to the fixed star that is being aspected, this can bring sometimes an episode of epilepsy, which can come with the star that is being activated by this eclipse, especially if there is an underlying pre-existing condition. This is not medical advice. I'm telling you astrologically how we normally look at it. Body just in general receives a lot more with this kind of eclipse because your nerves, your body is more stimulated with this eclipse, and it can be positively stimulated, it can be negatively stimulated. Nerves can be used in either ways. So toxins or the food that enters our body, it just influences us more. So keeping it light, keeping the toxins load as much as possible in general light would be very, very effective for us. Throat, jaw, ENT essentially are the areas that are ruled by Taurus, and they're more sensitive at this time to vibrations, to changes, to influences. Overall, it's our first step. It's our first step towards a very tough yet lucrative and essential long-term change in our physical existence. Persist through it. That's what I have for you. This is Charu, and I'll see you in the next video now. Thank you.